I've discovered a paper recently that beans, like other things, actually have their own set of yeasts on the individual beans.
Hey there, it's Dr. William Lee, physician, scientist, and author of Eat to Beat Disease. And I'm here with my new video series. It's really a fun thing that I'm doing with my friends and my colleagues. And it's real conversation between two people that you might have seen on a stage or on a program or at a summit. And what I wanted to be able to do is to bring people in on the conversations that we really have when we're actually just ourselves. And so today I'm super excited to be joined by my friend and colleague, Dr. Stephen Gundry. I can't believe anybody would not know who Dr. Gundry is. He is a pioneer in talking about the healthy nature of foods, the surprises that we actually seen. And recently, he has really gotten into one of my absolute favorite areas, which is olive oil. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this. And so, Steve, thanks for joining. And I thought, as part of sort of like the real conversation, I just learned that you came back from the south of France. So I'm a big fan of that area of the world. I've traveled there many, many years. I've got lots of good friends there. And one of the things that I love about that part of the Mediterranean is I'm always surprised and delighted by something delicious that I can find there to eat and that's also healthy. So what did you find? Tell me about your trip.
Well, one of the interesting things about both South France and Italy, and we spend actually a lot of time in both places, I think I have yet to have a salad at a restaurant that didn't have chicory forms of vegetables like radicchio, like treviso, like Belgian endive, like frisee, and chicory. And I'll bet you that you had the exact same experience. And, these guys to me, are so important because they contain, an amazing fiber, inulin. And inulin is, as you know, as I know, is so great for your gut microbiome. And it's always fascinated me that you go anywhere in the South France and Italy, and you're going to find, chicory family of vegetables in your salad. And it's like, hey, how come every one of these salads has these? And then you start looking at the literature and you go, oh, these guys knew this long before you and I knew this.
I'm telling you, that's one of the things I love about the Mediterranean is that the foods that you get there at any place, not necessarily a fancy, but any place, they use just intuitive combinations of ingredients that have been passed down for generations without a lot of science, but just intuition of what actually works. And I love that about good, healthy, fresh eating that, tastes great. Right. And, by the way, like the chicories and stuff, it's so much more interesting to eat than just like loose leaf lettuce that you tear up and put a little dressing on. Right.
Oh, yeah. And there's an expression that I use that you would back, more bitter, more better. And they love these, bitter greens and bitter foods and brightly colored. You're always eating the rainbow there, as you espouse and I do. It's just, you see it in action every day. And you're right, you don't have to eat it a fancy place.
And so help me understand. Like, I'm just picturing this chicory salad you've eaten over and over again recently. What else goes into it? Tell me about the other stuff in the salad.
Well, as you well know, there's going to be a bottle of olive oil on the table everywhere you go. And there's usually going to be a bottle of balsamic vinegar or another form of vinegar on the table everywhere you go. And there's actually, you may have noticed this, there's a pecking order depending on how often you go to a restaurant of which olive oil you're going to get.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, they're the touristas, and I know just about every olive oil in France and Italy now, and the touristas will get a fairly mild olive oil, but kind of the more you show up there, they start bringing out the better
they
stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
they upgrade you, and
Now,
it gets more
and
biting and
you
more
can
pungent.
and you can tell by the taste, or do they actually give it to you in a different bottle?
No, well, you can know, yeah, different bottles, but you can really tell by the taste.
Yeah.
And if it makes you cough, as I say, that's what you want to, that's then you're getting all these polyphenols.
I mean, and that's the other thing is just like what you're talking about, the taste sensation of the chicory, the radicchio. It's a little bitter. You've got the bite of the olive oil, sort of the front taste and also the back taste of it. I love the idea of the balsamic. So are there anything else, other things that go into the salads that you discovered this time?
Well, a lot of places now, it's surprising me, like we'd be at one particular hotel in Cap Ferrat, and now they have a half sliced avocado as one of the things you can just, pick up from, going through the buffet. And that's actually fairly new, but and it's drizzled with olive oil and it's got a little sea salt on it. And I go, wow, now I don't even have to, ask for it. Do you happen to have an avocado in the
Right,
back?
right. Well, and like what I love about what you just said is that because I can picture it in my head. It's super simple. Half an avocado, not taken out, a little sea salt and olive oil. Like that's all you need. Just take a spoon, and that's it. Like
Yeah.
that. So
It's,
simplicity is something that I really appreciate about great food. I just myself got back from, I was in the Mediterranean doing research on my next book, and I was in Greece, and I was looking at what they actually put in a Greek salad, right? So if you go in America, you order a Greek salad, it's kind of a big deal, and then when you look at it, it's kind of like this looks like any American salad that they threw a couple of olives in,
oh, yeah.
or a couple of chunks of feta cheese.
Yeah, that's right. And it's probably not actually feta cheese. It's probably made from cow milk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like the first time I ordered it again recently, I looked at it and I thought, this is the real Greek salad. It's elemental. It's got some cucumbers. It's got some volcanic tomatoes, just a little slim sliver of red onion. I mean, all these bioactives that are in there, some local wild organic oregano sprinkled on there, capers from the volcano, local stuff brined and put in there. You get your quercetin all in there. And, and even if you didn't know any science, which, obviously you and I, it's hard for us to not use our spectacles to look at the scientific goodies.
Yeah.
But right? Like that's how I navigate I'm sure you do the same way. But honestly, it just tastes so damn good.
Yeah. And, a lot of those salads over there, they use purslane as
Yes.
part. And, people go, wait a minute, that's the weed that grows in the sidewalk everywhere.
Right.
It's also, moss rose or portulaca. And I mean, purslane is just one of these other compounds that you go, holy cow, there's all this alpha linolenic acid in purslane and a great deal of fiber as well. And so you start going, why are they eating this weed? Why would you even, put this weed in your salad? And it always, like you, it prompts me to go, okay, why are they eating this weed? And
that one of the things that I always look for in a menu when I am doing my research is they call them wild greens. The Greek name, they call it horta. And basically they're literally going out more or less along the side of the road or the back of the yard or the hillside and just like ripping them out of the ground, cleaning it off, and then sauteing it very simply with a little bottle of olive oil, just a little heat, maybe a little garlic, or maybe some spices, and that's it. Like, and they present it to you. It looks as beautiful as if it were, coming out of some fancy restaurant. But it's as simple as actually what Mother Nature delivered. Like literally, it could have been from just 10 feet away in a restaurant.
yeah. And, you mentioned red onions. It's like, and you see red onions all the time in Southern Europe. And it's like, well, okay, why the red onion? Why isn't it this big slab of white onion that we have, in the United States? Well, like you said, there's far more polyphenol bioactive compounds in red onions. Plus, they're milder, and you can get that onion taste without blowing your mouth open.
Right. Well, and the other thing about red onions that I've been sort of diving into and doing some research about is, all right, and I like to cook. I don't know about you, but
Oh yeah.
well, first of all, here's something I learned. I happen to know the chief scientific officer that used to work at the USDA, and now he works for a produce organization, kind of a nonprofit trade organization. And so I asked him, I said, is there something that I should know about food safety that most people wouldn't know? Like, I'm pretty savvy. I think I'm pretty savvy. I like to be in the kitchen. He said, here's the thing. Do you wash your onions? And I'm like, sometimes I do, but usually I don't. He's like, you should definitely wash your onions, because that thing's been rolling around in the dust in the ground and everywhere else in a truck in the storage. And I'm like, well, what do you mean, like, wash your onions? Aren't we just peeling off the shell? He said, yeah, but like, think about it. If you're actually taking a knife and you're peeling off that stuff, you're just introducing the dirt. If you were a surgeon, which you are, I'm not, and you are saying, like, I'm not going to prep the skin, I'm just going to cut right in with a butter knife, like it's or a knife that's coming out of an unused dishwasher, like, you wouldn't be doing it. And so I'm like, okay, I get it. So one thing I learned about that is sort of like rinsing the onion for about 60 seconds. But then the second thing I didn't realize is that a lot of the quercetin that's found in the onion.
Right.
So I used to take the papery stuff off the onion, and then I would just, like, usually peel off some chunks on the outside, whatever. And he said, no. Actually, there's a lot of quercetin on the outer layers. So it's more concentrated on the outer layers, and it gets less concentrated, more dilute on the inside. So now what I do is, not only do I wash my onions, but I actually make sure I don't throw away some of the outer layer. So I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Good tip. No.
Yeah. And by the way, if you take a look at the European salad, so this is what I did when I was in Mediterranean, I was looking for what layer they were actually putting in the salad. And mostly it's that outer layer. It's got more pigment to it. And so I'm like, they actually know, like, right? So again, the same thing is, like, I don't know how come we don't know, but they know.
Well, because that's a whole nother subject, but they actually honor their elders, and they honor their the village elders and their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents, and these oral traditions are actually passed down from generation, and these wives' tales usually have a very good scientific basis that you and I like to discover, but they've known for eons.
They don't need to discover it because it's been passed down.
Right. A fun thing recently, and maybe I did not know this, but I know, particularly in Italy, they do eat a lot of beans, and they soak their beans for actually a considerable period of time.
How long?
So at least 24 hours. Some of them soak them for 48 hours. And because we'll go to a little village and find a chef in a little cafe and start talking. Why do you do this? What are you doing?
Right.
And so I've discovered a paper recently that beans, like other things, actually have their own set of yeasts on the individual beans. And when you soak them, they ferment. And it turns, And so the longer you soak them, the more the fermentation process actually breaks down the lectins in beans, one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
And so I said, son of a gun, I tell people eat fermented foods all the time.
Right.
And yet I never even thought that the reason they're soaking the beans was to start the fermentation process. And in fact, you see this foam, in the water when you're soaking.
And you don't think about it, right?
Yeah, I don't even think about it. Son of a gun. And so there's this paper saying, oh, look, there's all these lactobacilli and all these other bacteria that actually ferment the beans for you. And I go, how do these guys get so smart?
Well, I think what it is that we're using, like, folks like you and I and the people that we work with, we're using the power and the tools of modern science to basically simply rediscover. It's kind of like an archaeology of sorts, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's been known we are just blowing the dust off the cover and opening it back up to see what was inside, right? And having a modern understanding, of course. I love that. So when you are in the Mediterranean, are you do you stick with a purely vegan diet? Are you what other if not, then what are the goodies that you have? Tell
Well,
me all the
yeah.
things
So,
you love.
I classify myself as a veg aquarian. And by that, I mean, I eat lots of plants, but
Mhm.
I actually, on the weekend, my wife and I supplement our diet with wild shellfish and wild fish. And we
Mm.
do that for a purpose. I'm a big fan of a class of phospholipids that make plasmalogens, that I know are aware of. And one of the best sources of plasmalogens are shellfish, particularly mollusks and bivalves. And it's always entertaining to me that these things feature very prominently in the cuisine of the Mediterranean. And
What from your perspective, what are some of the most striking health benefits of that
ah,
of the
yeah, great question. Well, these phospholipids have become very intriguing to me because in Alzheimer's research, we know that one of the things that's absent or very sparse in the brain of
Mm,
Alzheimer's patients are this class of phospholipids that are called plasmalogens. And there's been some very elegant studies, particularly in Japan, looking at supplementing the diet with plasmalogens from scallops in mild cognitive impairment patients. And
these are the by the way, these are the big scallops, right? The sea scallops,
yeah, sea scallops.
as as
Uh,
opposed to the tiny
yeah,
little
not the little
base.
base Alps
Yeah,
that you
yeah, yeah,
guys eat up there. But they're also present in all the other shellfish.
Really?
Another interesting place, speaking of why do people eat these things, are sea
Yeah.
cucumbers.
Oh,
And
I love sea cucumbers.
yeah, well, sea cucumbers are a rich source of these phospholipids that we really don't have in our diet anymore. And so
Wow.
what the heck?
Did,
I
did you?
like my brain, and I want to,
Why not?
yeah, I want to keep it working. But
Have you
so
now? Did you eat sea cucumber in the Mediterranean? Have they?
no, they didn't serve
That's
it.
in Asia.
Yeah, that's in Asia, but
Yeah.
yeah, but they use far more shellfish and mollusks
And you know what I love, that when I am doing research in the Mediterranean, I love to go to their seafood markets and
oh
their
yeah.
fresh markets and wet markets. And one thing that always blows me away, is the diversity and variety of shellfish that you can't get at home, right? So what do you get? You get like steamers and you get mussels and a couple of crabs. But like when you go to these places and you see all these, it's like a shellfish going to a shellfish collector store,
Oh
except
yeah,
that they're
yeah.
live, whole, and just so mesmerizing to me. Um, like okay, so shellfish. How do you like to have them cooked? How did you have them cooked?
Well, again, it depends on where you go, but a lot of times, they'll bring out these towers like you talk about, and there's like, there's 10 different little cockles, and they give you little
Whelks.
bitty whelks, and they give you these little forks, and you go, I'm not gonna, how that's a lot of work. But it's interesting. It is a lot of work to eat shellfish. We forget how easy we make it for ourselves whenever we're
Yeah,
eating. Oh, I want popcorn shrimp. That'll be good for me.
yeah,
No.
that's true. Or fried chicken in a bucket, like
Yeah,
you
but give
don't
me the
need to.
chicken tenders.
No, it's actually that's a really good point. One of my favorite ways of actually cooking shellfish is, I learned this from a friend of mine who's a professional chef. If you have just a griddle or a plancha, and all you got to do is put a little bit of olive oil, and I didn't realize this, but this whole issue about the smoke point of olive oil, it's all kind of crap. I mean, you can cook olive oil at any reasonable temperature is fine. And
In fact,
cooking,
fun
right?
fact, it is actually the least oxidizable of
E-
any oil.
Exactly.
It's even better than coconut oil.
I
And yeah,
know.
yeah, and the
Wh-
smoke point has nothing to do.
To
Everybody
do
says,
with it.
"Oh, it's oxidizing." No, it's horrible
No,
for you.
no, the polyphenols in the extra virgin olive oil protects the oil at heat,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
it's so amazing. I want to come back to the olive oil in a second, but so I love to just put a little olive oil, put the shellfish down,
yep,
let them and you could put a little cover on top of it, and they will just pop open when they're
yep,
done, and they release their briny juices.
yep.
So
Yeah.
delicious.
And a lot of a la plancha, like you say, you'll see
Exactly.
that so many places. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about olive oil because I noticed that I've been following you, of course, and because who doesn't? And there's all this information that you've been talking about olive oil. How did you get into olive oil?
Well, one of my expressions from long ago is the only purpose of food is to get olive oil in your mouth. And that was actually based on looking at very long-lived cultures, particularly in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And some of these cultures use a liter of olive oil per week, which is about 10 to 12 tablespoons a day. And there's been several very good olive oil studies. I think the best one was the Predimed study,
Yeah.
where, and I think I thought it was a very well designed study. Maybe we could argue about it, but
That's a study from Spain
Spain,
that looked at how people actually live their lives and eat their food, but they designed it to really track the diet by categories of ingredients, including olive oil. And then they looked at important health outcomes that we all care about, and then they found the patterns. So, what patterns do you think people need to know about olive oil? What's good about it?
well, they looked at multiple patterns, and they basically took 65-year-old individuals who had coronary artery disease, and they made one group use a liter of olive oil per week, and they actually made people bring their jar or bottle,
Empty.
yeah, the empty one, and exchange it at the clinic, which is better control than a lot of experimental studies. And they followed them for 5 years, and the original plan was just to look at coronary disease, and there was actually a tremendous benefit in lessening a new event from the olive oil group. But then one of the things that really caught my eye, they had lots of little sub variants that they published on. One that caught my eye was memory. And the olive oil group at the end of 5 years actually had improved memory compared to when they started at age 65.
Wow.
Yeah, here you go.
That's better. That's better. That's better than before, not less worse.
Exactly. And the other group were worse, they were worse, which one would expect. Okay, they're now
Okay.
70 and blah,
Right.
blah, blah. But better,
Yeah.
5 years on, it's like,
You know what, that's like lengthening telomeres as opposed to just slowing them down.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
as one of the things that you and I share in common is that our background is in like serious hardcore research for you at the NIH.
Yeah.
And we don't expect as biologists doing medical research to see reversal or improvement from baseline. Our training shows us in disease models that kind of the best we can hope for is less bad, slowing things down. Like that's the expectation of science. But when, like what you were just describing, when we see something improving, that means that we got to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so then, of course, you go, all right.
Hey there. I have a valuable resource that you won't want to miss. It's all about the 5 signs that your legs and your feet may be warning you about poor health. Your legs and feet can give you important clues about your overall health, especially when it comes to your circulation. If you want to learn more about these warning signs and how to take action, click on the link below the video to access this essential information. Or you can access the guide by scanning the QR code on the screen right now. Now, let's get back to the video.
oleic acid, which is, the major monounsaturated fat in olive oil, isn't particularly interesting as a fat. It's a monounsaturated fat. And I had the pleasure a few years ago of talking to the head of the Olive Oil Council in Italy, who's a physician. And he says, it's not a particularly interesting fat, but it's what it's carrying. That's what we're realizing, all these polyphenols, that it's just an agent to get polyphenols delivered into you.
It's a carrier.
It's a carrier. And he says, we forget about oleic acid. Yeah, it's in lots of other stuff too. But
hydroxytyrosol?
Yeah, hydroxytyrosol.
So here's what you just said. Food is just a carrier for olive oil. Olive oil is just a carrier for polyphenols like hydroxytyrosol.
Yeah, and there's multiple other ones.
That's like the Russian doll, right? So basically, it's a Trojan horse of goodness delivering the polyphenols. So that is really truly amazing. So do you have your own olive oil now? Is that what you did?
Well, yeah, it is a fascinating story. It's a great story. You'll love this. It goes right up our alley. So you and I know that in general, great wines come from stressed vines. They are in rock, they're underwater, they're often at high elevation, exposed to sunlight. And the more the plant is stressed, the more polyphenols that the plant uses to protect itself and its grapes. And so there's a young man by the name of Othmane who lives in Morocco, whose family is fourth generation olive oil producers. They actually own 1,200,000 olive trees. And he's a wine snob, and he approached his father. And he says, I'll bet you that olives would respond to the same stresses that grapes are. And I bet you we could get a much higher polyphenol content in olives if we stressed them. And he said, would you let me do it? And
how did he stress them?
He goes out in the middle of the Moroccan desert, finds rock, and it's near the Atlas Mountains, and it's really hot. So he plants the olive trees in rows, just like vines, rather than, and he grows them in rows like vines. He grows them in rock, he underwaters them. It's hot in the Moroccan desert. And so it takes 5 years to get a crop. And it's actually a great story. So he gets his olive oil press and he takes it into the local olive oil guy, gets it pressed. He takes it to his dad and he says, Dad, look at this. This is great. And his dad tastes it. And he says, this is horrible. This isn't even extra virgin olive oil. Son, you're a failure. So he takes it to the local certification guy and he certifies it as extra virgin. He says, but this is really interesting stuff. He said, would you mind if we send it up to Paris to the olive oil? Yeah, to analyze it. And so he gets a call from Paris a couple of weeks later. Says, hey, are you the guy with the olive oil from Morocco? He said, yeah, it's me. He says, what the heck are you doing? This stuff has 30 times more polyphenols than we've ever tested in any olive oil. What the heck are you doing?
So that's the mic drop, right?
Yeah.
Basically, the lab in Paris that had no skin in the game had no idea what was being said. It was a blinded test,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
just came up with a number, and they know what all the other numbers look like for regular olive oils they test.
Correct.
And they found something different. So what about the taste? What is it? What was the?
Well, so anyhow, so his dad said, okay, smart guy, you did it, but who's going to buy this? And so
that's you.
That's me. So I literally get a cold call from this guy because he had been at a trade show in France. And he was telling him about this. He says, I did it, but who wants this? He says, there's a guy that you need to look up, and he's Dr. Gundry, because he's a nut about polyphenols. So I get a cold call from this nice young man. And the next thing I know, I'm in a plane over to Morocco. I'm going, I got to see this for myself. And so, and then I saw his production process, and he presses actually in the fields. It's a great story. So I said, Done deal. I'll take it. And
Wow.
and now it's actually one of our biggest selling products.
What is it? Can you hold it up? Let me look. Can I see?
Yeah. So it's
Do you have a polyphenol high?
yeah,
Called polyphenol high?
polyphenol rich olive oil from Gundry
Okay.
MD. And
Wow.
I got to get you some. And
fantastic.
And so the cool thing about this is, all right, so you're supposed to have a liter of olive oil per week. The polyphenols in here, all you need is a tablespoon a day.
Anybody can do that.
Anybody can do that. So you can, you can have it as a shot. You can put it on your salad. It's easy to do. And so my job is to get olive oil into people. And if just a tablespoon will get you the hydroxytyrosol that would be in, a liter.
Can I ask you, what is the varietal's name that they planted? Do you happen to know that?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but now you've got me curious. I'm sure I know it or knew it, but it's one of those things that left.
Well, the reason is that there have been some really nice studies looking at high polyphenol, like within the Mediterranean, the highest polyphenol monovarietals. And they found that Cornecchi in the Peloponnesus, the Picual in Spain, and Moriolo in Umbria all have, markedly higher levels. So sort of the best of the best. But it would be really interesting if they planted those naturally high polyphenol monovarietals and stuck them in the desert. So would you find
I'll find out
what the varietals?
Yeah, I will find out.
It's
easy to do.
Let's do that. In fact, it'd be a lot of fun to actually even collaborate on maybe like a comparative research study. We can find some other olive oils and just kind of see what the graph looks like.
Yeah.
That would be an awful lot of fun. I mean, and what I love about just our conversation, Dr. Gundry, is that, we're kindred spirits. We're both researchers. We're both doctors. We were created out of that same factory that pumps out MDs. And yet, like we went and did something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out. And I'll see you there.